Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm one of your eternal witnesses, Mark Mara. I am here with my co-host, Michael Mapson. Say hi, Mapson.
Hi, Mapson.
And we are here actually to talk about a few different things today. We have both qualified for the upcoming regional championships, and so we'll talk a bit about the decks that we chose to play and why we chose to play them, and maybe any changes that we would have made or considerations that we're thinking about as it relates to the upcoming RC. We also both top forward a vintage event recently, so we'll talk a bit about that. I actually successfully dragged Mapson into the vintage meta, and I think maybe we'll have to see. So we'll let the suspense build, but I think maybe he had fun. I did see him smile like, I don't know, two times at least. Was it two, Mapson, or just one?
I don't know. It wasn't a lot.
What? Well, listen, I'll tell you, the number I would have bet on before for vintage smiles was zero. So even if it's one, like I'll take it. It's a step in the right direction. And then finally, we'll talk about where you might be able to play some Magic with us, what events we're planning on going to before the next time we record. So, fun list for you guys today. And so, let's jump right on into it. So, Mapson, remind me, do you have one qualification or two for the upcoming RC series here in the U.S.?
I have two. I was very surprised to end up with two. I didn't have a lot of chances to play this season, so I fired off a total of five bullets, and I got three top eights and two wins. Yeah, just my second queue came this weekend, so right in the nick of time.
Excellent. So people will see you in Houston and they'll see you in Las Vegas, it sounds like. Remind me, was that limited or was that constructed for your second one?
So the first one, well, you asked about the second, but the first was modern, so we'll get to that. The second
That
one
one I
was,
knew about. I don't remember the second one as much.
it's funny because the second one, obviously more recent. I
Yeah.
queued this past weekend at on the draw playing limited. For
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I'm not much of a limited guy. I enjoy limited, but I don't play it that much. So I did not have high hopes for for this event. Um, it was a really small turnout. The cost was kind of high, so I think that was prohibitive. So only eight people showed up, so we went straight to draft, missing out on sealed, which is actually my preferred of the two formats. I know that's a hot take, but I drafted a black red deck. It worked out well. I got pretty fortunate. I beat our friend Josh in the quarters, though he was going to concede anyways because he already has this one invite he wants. Um, then I had to battle GP champion Ralph Batesh in the next round. So that was difficult. Ralph is always a fierce competitor. And then my third round opponent just offered to concede because he didn't want to go. So I will say, not the hardest I've worked for an invite. I left. Josh and I were hanging out afterwards. I was just like, this wasn't even satisfying. Like I won, but like I had to win one match.
Right,
So
right. Yeah. You had to crush some dreams for exactly one match of Magic then. So, well, that's awesome, man. So a limited qualification, a constructed qualification, very well rounded. Folks that know me know I'm not very much of a limited player myself. So, regardless of what path you took to get there, still Magic to me. No pun intended, but great to hear. But let's talk a bit about Modern because I think that's probably what most people want to hear about. So, what did you play when you got your modern qualification? What deck did you show up with that day?
as a surprise to very few, I qualified with Amulet. So yeah, I know, right? Who would have ever seen that coming? Me playing Amulet.
Yeah.
Um, no, I mean the deck is really good right now, right? Like I know there's always the joke about, oh, Titan fans won't say Titan's good, like they just will like let it fly under the radar, and then they'll crush everyone, and then when people talk about bans, they're like, oh, it sucks. No, 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 it's the best deck in the format. Like I don't know, it's just really good. It kind of sucks because it's not actually a good deck to be the best deck in the format, right? Like it makes people angry. The new loops are atrocious to play with online. Like they're just so awful. They're not nearly as fun. Like I kind of just miss being able to go turn one Grazer, turn two Dryad, like turn three resolve my Titan, shoot you with some Valakuts, hope it's good enough. But yeah, even though it's less fun, it's just really, really strong, and it's still pretty fun. So
Yeah, it is. I will second that it is quite miserable to play against online. Just watching them do the loops and all that. It is. I did lose in the top eight this past weekend to Amulet, and I will say, as much as it is a bummer to lose at any point, it's a lot less painful to lose in paper when you can shortcut and the opponent can demonstrate the loops and like online, there's always a chance they misclick or whatever. If it's a high stakes tournament, like up to you if you choose to make them play it out in that situation or not. I know that's a bit of a religious debate, so maybe we won't open that can of worms here. But at least in paper, they just kind of hand wave and say, "Besage you all your stuff, Otawara, all your stuff, make 1,000 Titans," and you can just say, "Okay, I'm dead," And so that's once they've demonstrated the loop, it is a little bit easier in paper. But yeah, man, that is egregious on Magic Online. Um,
yes,
so you think it's the best deck in the format right now? I think it's probably it's absolutely in the conversation. Tough to disagree with that. I mean, what do you think are the really good matchups for Amulet right now, and what do you think are the matchups that if somebody is maybe not an Amulet aficionado but wants to play a deck that might have some game against Amulet if they expect to be up against it? Like, what would you recommend in that situation as well?
yeah. So I'm just gonna go through the metagame according to Goldfish because that'll be easier for me. Um, Boros Energy, which I think is like the next best thing you can be doing, is a pretty favorable matchup. So that's already a good sign, right? Like you have one of the best decks in the format, and it's a pretty popular deck. And so that being a good matchup is really nice. They just can't really interact with you favorably, and you can play sweepers and just kind of go over the top of them. Also, people are really stubborn and just like don't register the card Blood Moon. Um, Domain Zoo is, I think, favorable, not nearly to the same extent. The mirror is obviously 50-50. The Esper mid-range decks are like pretty close. When they don't have the blue in them, like when it's just the black-white blink deck, you're pretty favored. Adding blue for consign goes a surprisingly long way. Belcher is pretty bad.
So let me ask you a question about that Esper mid-range though, Mapson, because there's kind of like two different takes on the blue splash. There's blue just for consign, and then there's blue for like main deck frog and consign. Does frog matter really at all in your experience in this matchup, or is it really the consign that makes the blue the tough part to deal with for Amulet?
I mean, the consign is what matters, um, but like it's all good, you know. Like Frog is just a generically good card. Um, so it can only ever be so bad, but it's really the consigns that are like the issue. When they're being backed by like the land destruction aspects of the deck and like the solitudes, it just kind of gives them the little bit of extra control that they need. Mr. Esper, Belcher, bad matchup, but it's fun. At least I find it fun. I don't think everyone would agree with that. Um, the Gruul Brood Scale deck, which I think is just like underplayed. I don't know how you feel about that. Um, that deck is a good matchup as well. Living End is, I would say, one of our worst matchups. Goryo's is also bad. Ruby is bad. Murktide is bad. Uh, is it Steel Cutter and Prowess? I feel favored. And those are like the top 12 decks on Goldfish. So like basically I feel good against the top of the metagame minus like Belcher, Living End, Goryo's, and Storm. But like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was
That's
like you feel like you dunk on the top five, and then the next four are a bit tough. But I think if you look at like the play rates of Living End, Gorios, Ruby, and Murktide, it's like 13-ish% or something like that. So, even though it's four decks, it's not like it's a gigantic slice of the meta. So that feels pretty good to feel like you're favored against like the entire top. What's this, 15? It's almost like top 40% of the meta. It looks like you feel like you're in a pretty good spot against. So, I mean, that's a great place to be.
yeah. It's also like one of those things where let's look at any matchup where you're unfavored. You can still just like win by turn two. So it's one of
Yeah.
those things where like your matchup can only ever be so bad when your ceiling is just like kill your opponent before they can even interact.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Um, so now, how long ago? did you qualify with Amulet? And obviously there's the metagame evolves as time goes on. Like, is there anything you would have done different with the list that you qualified with if you were playing with it, maybe taking one last shot at an invite this weekend if you still needed one? Is there anything you'd be doing different?
Yeah, so it actually wasn't that long ago. I played just a pretty standard list. Um, there are some question points. So I feel like the number of Green Sun Zeniths people play is constantly changing. So like I played one in the main and one in the sideboard, which I was pretty happy with. I think it lets you play many more bullets, so it lets you like play Collector Oov, Six, Tireless Tracker, cards like that, and actually be able to find them if you want. I think it also makes, because I was playing a Singleton Dryad, I think it makes that better. I don't know. I felt good about the list. I played the three scape shifts. Nah, I mean, it was pretty good. I will say I kind of had a rough field that day. Like I played against Blue Red Murktide in the top eight. I played against Gorios. I played against Merfolk, which once upon a time was like our best matchup. It was like impossible to lose, and now it's like impossible to win. Um,
Is that because of Harbinger?
yeah, so it used to be really good, but then uh, they printed Tashana's Tidebinder. They printed Subtlety, and they printed Harbinger.
Those all seem difficult to beat, especially when they line up one after another against you.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I like when I played against them, I had a game where my opponent activated Vial, put in Harbinger, and I dismembered it. They had like Force of Negation. I had Mystical Dispute, and I was like, "Oh, I got it! Like I'm so good." And then they're just like, "Okay, play this Harbinger from my hand with Cavern of Souls." It's like, I guess. I guess I'm just never winning. But so something I have seen popping up in lists recently is people playing both Explore and Malevolent Rumble, because that was a big point of contention. Do you play Explore? Do you play Rumble? Rumble is a very good card. It obviously digs you towards things, but I've always been a fan of Explore. Explore just kind of lets you go a little bit quicker. I think in games where your resources are being attacked, getting to put an extra land in play is really nice. The spawn that you get just like doesn't really matter. And I would say post board, your graveyard is being attacked more, so filling it up more doesn't really do much. So I just think like you're playing this card that gets worse post board versus explore. I think is often better post board. Um, so I was leaning towards Explorer, but now I'm seeing people play like a mix of both. And so that's kind of appealing to me. So that is something I'd be interested in trying. So if I did have to go for another invite this weekend, I would probably just YOLO it.
And then last question for you on Amulet. So if you were going to the RC tomorrow, do you think this is the deck that you'd be taking? I mean, obviously knowing there's some cards that'll come out between now and the actual RC, and so things may change. But in the current metagame, would you be showing up to the RC tomorrow with Amulet?
Yeah. And like I know people will just say, "Oh, well, he just always plays Amulet," but like that's not entirely true, right? Like I am totally fine to show up with other decks. I just think this deck is the best thing you can be doing. Again, you can kill people on turn two, and that's not every game, but it's pretty consistent by like turn three or four that you're trying to win. And I think in this day and age with Magic, being proactive is where you want to be, which is funny because the deck you're going to talk about, I know you weren't very proactive, um, but I generally find just being the aggressor is where you want to be, and I think this deck does a really good job of doing that. I think it can be as fast as like a glass cannon deck, but also is super resilient. You can win through so much hate. Your deck is so customizable. There's like I was talking about the Green Sun Zenith, and then with the Green Sun Zenith, you can have your whole package, right? Like six adds different lines. Collector Oof adds like different hate pieces. Land Liberator gives you more playing matchups. Like Keen-Eyed Curator can kind of help with those graveyard matchups. You can play Endurance if you want. You have access to sweepers. You have access to counter magic in blue. So you can kind of just build your sideboard to do whatever you want it to do. And so like if you have a good read and are comfortable playing the deck, I think it's so hard to beat it.
Yeah, for sure. No, I can definitely see that. And I will vouch for the fact that I have seen you play other decks in Modern besides Amulet. Now, the two most recent ones that come to mind are Underworld Breach and Nadu, so you're a degenerate on all levels, no matter which way you look. But I can vouch for the fact that that is true.
Like I was playing Underworld Breach before it was cool, and what did you want me to do? Not cast that card? Have you read that card?
I will say that I do know that feeling because I was a big, as you know, a big Mystic Forge gamer in Legacy before we got the One Ring and some of the other tools that that deck uses today, long before Vexing Bauble came and went and broke our hearts. And so, yeah, it does feel good when like your pet deck actually gets like jacked up and becomes like the broken degenerate deck. Like you're like, hey, I was here first. I know this deck better than everybody else that just jumped on the bandwagon. It really is a great feeling. And when you do feel like you're playing the best deck in that situation, whether it's Breach or Amulet or whatever, like a lot of times as you get really deep in the tournament, like you're more likely to see the mirror in these like maybe lower play rate decks, but that have a higher win rate. And so like having a mastery of the mirror because it's just kind of been your deck even long before it was broken, I think is a really big advantage there. So yeah, it's but I have read Underworld Breach. I do understand why you were casting it up until they said you are no
It's really
longer
good.
allowed to do that. Yeah. Yawgmoth's Will for one less mana and doesn't exile the card that you want to cast over and over. Wow, what were they thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I just like don't really understand why they unbanned Mox Opal. Like, I don't know how
I
they looked
love
at it
Mox
and were
Opal.
like,
I love Mox Opal. Don't put the hex on it. I do not want to see that go back to the ban list in
like
Modern.
fast mana is consistently a mistake.
Yeah, but some mistakes are fun.
True. Speaking of fun mistakes, you played Control, I believe.
Kind of, yeah. So my qualification came from the Jeskai Dress Down deck. So yeah, there is some counter magic in here, but it plays more of kind of like a mid-rangey deck a bit. Like it didn't have counter spell. It did have force and negation, so there was some counter magic, but and of course main deck consigns because you're trying to scam Null Drifter and Flage. So there is quite a lot of interaction, but it's not your traditional like Drago control deck, you know, where you're trying to flash in a Solitude and have it go all the way after you've grinded them down. Like there were definitely some games where we were playing the long game and trading resources and that sort of thing. But there were also quite a number of games where it's just turn two in your end step, dress down, turn three, evoke a Null Drifter, draw 2, 4, 4, go, you know? And so there were, I felt like against some of the decks where you do need to be faster and a bit more proactive, like the dress down consign lines to scam in your Null Drifters or Flages, gives you, I think, a chance, maybe not a great chance, but still a chance in some of those matchups where maybe a more traditional control deck, just I think doesn't have as good of a chance. So yeah, I played Just Guy Dress Down, uh, and that's what I got to get the invite.
Okay. I can't believe you played that deck.
It's not good. It's not good. So I mean, like I'm the kind of guy where if I can find an excuse to not play the best deck, outside of like, really big events, I'll probably play the deck that's not as good as the best deck if I feel like it's got a shot against it. And so I thought it had a pretty good shot against energy. And actually I got very lucky the weekend of this RC because or RCQ I should say, because it was the weekend that prowess like really started taking off and everybody was playing steel cutters and stuff. And so, to have four consigned to memories, four dress downs, four discharges, and then just Flasional Drifter, etc. I felt like a god playing against the couple of prowess players that I played against that week. A couple of them are buddies of ours, so we kind of had a laugh about how the matchup went afterwards because it did feel very lopsided. But yeah, this is definitely, I don't think, nearly as well positioned now that prowess is, I think, at a more reasonable play rate these days.
Okay. So let's say you. So it sounds like you would not play this deck again.
I would not. No, I just think, to your point earlier, modern, you really want to be doing something proactive. like this past weekend, I top aided an RCQ with the Eldrazi deck, which has its problems of its own. But like that's the kind of deck that I would much rather be playing in the modern format. I just think it's a tricky proposition to be registering counter spells and things like that. Now, I will say that there is a Jeskai deck that's kind of been floating around that a few Moto grinders have been playing. That's playing things like Thunder Trap trainers and Flages and things like that that are perhaps a bit better positioned in the current meta. So if I was looking for a control deck, I'd probably be looking for some of those like Jeskai, Thunder Trap Trainer, Flare of Denial type control lists that are out there. But yeah, I would probably not recommend this Jeskai deck. I think I just picked a good one for the weekend and kind of got lucky with my matchups. I do not think this is a deck that does well in a very large field.
Well, it's good of you to be able to admit that. Um, but let's say, gun to your head, you have to play this deck again.
Yeah.
What changes are you making to give yourself the best shot while staying true to the spirit of the archetype?
Yeah, so I played an invert polarity, which I just copied a list with very minimal play testing, which is very much my style for last minute RCQs, because a lot of times I make up my mind last minute and just find a list that speaks to my heart and show up cold and sees what happens. So it's probably not the best tournament prep to try to replicate if you're a listener. But the list that I copied did have an invert polarity. I never got to flip a coin the entire day, so that's a bummer. But I was only on two prismatic endings and three Wrath the Skies, and I've got to imagine that invert polarity is better as either a third prismatic ending, or perhaps a fourth main deck Wrath the Skies, and then that opens up a sideboard slot because the fourth Wrath is in the side. So I would want a little bit more early interaction. I'd also probably cut down. I was playing four Tune the Narratives, and Tune the Narrative is nice because like it allows you when you start with Hollowed Fountain, it allows you to effectively have a turn two Wrath for two on the draw, which is fantastic against energy when they go like one drop go, a Johnny go, and then you can just wipe them right on curve. That is really nice, but you don't need four because when you're not in that situation, the card is pretty bad, and the deck does not have a problem generating enough energy or creating a board state where you have enough lands in play to pay the X if you don't generate energy ahead of time. That I really found that I would rather have it be a better cantrip. So I think maybe a 2-2 split between Preordain and Tune the Narrative uh, is probably something that's at least worth looking at. Um, but yeah, I think those are the couple of changes that I would make there. Also, immediately, as soon as I copied the list, it had one Solitude in it. I was like, that can't be right. I think we got to find spot for a second Solitude. The one Solitude was actually pretty good. I actually didn't feel the need for a second one, and maybe I just got lucky and drew it right when I needed it. But yeah, I think that's another consideration there, potentially second Solitude. So yeah, cut some of the weird cards, like a couple tunes and an invert polarity. Put in a little bit more early interaction is what I would say. And also, I was unbelievably impressed by Brain Surge in this deck. And so I obviously didn't get Bowmastered, otherwise I would probably have a different opinion of it. And I did have to play carefully in a number of matchups to make sure that I didn't get Bowmastered. But man, is the juice worth the squeeze with this card in a control-y type deck. I know I just said it wasn't really a control deck a minute ago, but in this style of deck where it's mid-range control, it's aggro or mid-range control or control, whatever you want to call it. You know, uh, it was unbelievable to just be able to draw four and shuffle away your two worst cards. I mean, obviously, we both know how good Brainstorm is in Legacy, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed casting Brain Surge in this deck in Modern, and that was very much, I think, the highlight for me. And I was on three Brain Surge on this list, and so I don't know that you need a fourth one, honestly, because a three mana draw spell that's a lot of mana. And you already have Null Drifter that you're evoking in that kind of three mana draw spell slot as well. Um, but I think there could also potentially be an argument for a fourth Brain Surge as well if you expect a little bit slower of a meta. Now, if you're expecting like energy prowess Amulet, in your store or in your event, fourth brain surge is probably a bit irresponsible, and you'll maybe want a little bit more of that early interaction.
Hey, I don't think I've cast a brain search yet.
You should, man. You should. I mean, I've been playing Omnath and four color piles and stuff forever, and I saw a list that did well recently, and it had Brain Surge in it, and the pull was so strong that it actually had me register a four color Omnath pile like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was like, man, Omnath, Brain Surge, it's like my past, my present, it's all the things I like, and I think I went like 0-2 drop in that event. So don't let Brain Surge fool you into putting it in a bad deck. But I think in a deck that would already want that type of effect, I know everybody loves stock up, and don't get me wrong, I'm not poo-pooing stock up. Stock up is unreal, very, very, very good card. I think Brain Surge should be in the conversation in certain decks. Now, decks that are looking for like A plus B combo pieces or whatever, yes, stock up all day long. But decks that really want to like sculpt their hand and look for answers and shuffle away dead cards in matchups and maybe play a lot of like onesie twosies, that are silver bullets for certain matchups, and Brain Surge lets you shuffle them away. I think it should be in the same conversation as stock up. I think you still default to stock up, but you really need to take a look at your deck and say, is this the kind of thing that would benefit from Brain Surge's, being able to sculpt your hand a bit better than stock up does and shuffle some of your dead cards away.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I've registered Brain Surge and Breach. I just don't think I ever drew it.
Realized Breach played Brain Surge. Was it like a sideboard card or something, or was it in the main deck?
Yeah, it was a sideboard card, and then it was
Mm.
like, okay, are you supposed to play stock up or are you supposed to
Oh,
play
sure.
Brain
Yeah.
Surge? So, it wasn't super clear. But on top of that, I know we want to get to vintage, but before we do, I know you mentioned you wouldn't play this deck, but you have been high on this mono red Eldrazi deck. Do you want to take a moment and talk about that?
Yeah, I think we should. It's kind of been gaining popularity the last couple of weeks. It's actually green red, so the green is for sowing Mycospawn and for kicking
Boo.
and for kicking Wastegate Battle Mage. Oh my God, the Amulet player is booing at a land destruction card. Wow, color me surprised. Uh, it is a good card though. And
Yeah.
the red is for Eldrazi Linebreaker, which has been just such a fun card to cast. I've owned it since the set came out. Like I bought all of the Eldrazi basically on release weekend. And this is the first time I've actually registered Eldrazi Linebreaker, and I was very impressed. I'm disappointed in myself that it took so long. And so essentially this deck, it's playing four Ugin's Labyrinths, and it's also playing four Eldrazi Temples. So those are your soul lands. And then you're playing things like Wastegate Battle Mage. What's the two drop, the Lord? I always get it confused. There's It That Betrays and It That Heralds the End. So one of them's a two drop and one of them's like a nine drop.
It is it that heralds the end. And for the listeners, I will have a link to this deck list in the show notes. I would have a link to the other two, but they're harder to find our exact list. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, it's playing like the It That Heralds the End, which is the two drop 2/2 that's a Lord, and it reduces your seven drops by one, which you actually have a bunch of in the deck because you're playing Ugin's Labyrinth. And so the deck is really fun. I've been playing the list that I played in the RCQ didn't have a Gemstone Caverns, but I've been kind of refining it online a little bit since then. And let me tell you, when you're on the draw and you go like, first of all, this was a cool interaction. Reveal Devourer of Destiny for the pregame effect, then reveal Gemstone Caverns, then put the caverns in play and exile that useless Devourer of Destiny. Like that feels so good because Devourer of Destiny is such a bad card, but it's a necessary evil in the deck. So if you don't have an Ugin's Lab to imprint it to right away, having just like one more thing to exile it to for an early game advantage is really sweet. And so there were a whole bunch of games where my opponent would go like, I would pregame in a Gemstone Cavern, and they would go turn one Ocelot Pride, pass, and I would go turn one Eldrazi Temple Linebreaker, attack with a 4/3 trampler on my turn one. And it's gross. It's really gross. It feels great to be on the side doing it. I cannot imagine it feels good to be sitting across looking at that with your silly 1/1 little cat token there. So yeah, I've really been enjoying the deck, and so it's kind of fun because it's got both that really explosive early game. But then the cards that you have to play to imprint on Ugin's Lab, the 7 drops, Devourer of Destiny. I've been playing some builds with Null Drifters. Some builds with All Is Dusts. Sire of the Seven Deaths has been consistent. 3 to 4 sires has been in all of my lists. So when you do find yourself, turn 5, turn 6, you haven't managed to run them down yet. The fact that you can then just like put a Sire of Seven Deaths in play, put a Devourer of Destiny in play, and exile their thing, like the deck has a really impressive top end as well. So it's been super fun to play. I'll say what I haven't loved about it is it does kind of have the like you can draw the wrong side of your deck problem. Like if you're drawing Ugin's Labyrinths and mulliganing because you don't have things to imprint on them, like there are a lot of hands where you don't do anything until turn 3, and you just can't keep hands like that in this meta. So it's not a deck that that mulligans really well because of that, and I find myself going to like 6 and 5 cards quite a lot. And you also sometimes end up in situations where, you're just drawing your big guys at a bad time. And you're like, man, if this Sire of the Seven Deaths was a Thought Not Seer, I probably win here, but I have to pass the turn and my Storm opponent's going to kill me right now. So, the deck is certainly not without its issues, but man, you do I think this deck, like the high end starts, you're doing more powerful things than almost any other deck in the format right now. And it feels really powerful. I have struggled a bit against energy, which is problematic, obviously. Like, you just can't show up to a big event with a deck that struggles against energy. But I'm not convinced that that's the deck's fault. Like, I don't think I have a coherent sideboard plan for energy with this deck yet, and so I'm not willing to wave the white flag and say it can't beat energy consistently. But I will say to anybody looking to try this deck out, um, if you expect a lot of energy in your meta, you may want to put a little bit of extra consideration into your sideboard choices and make sure you have a really solid sideboard plan. Because despite the really fast starts, energy is one of those decks that has the removal and has the interaction to survive your onslaught for the first few turns. And then they start doing things like flipping a Johnny and playing Goblin Bombardments and all these other things that just, make it really difficult for you to win like a mid to a long range game against them because they can just pile up damage so fast against you. So, food for thought for anybody that's an Eldrazi lover like myself. Fun deck, really powerful. If you haven't played it yet and it's the kind of deck that you think you like, I think you'll like it as well. It does a lot of really great stuff, but we may need to put our brains together on how we can have a decent energy matchup.
Okay, so I have a comment and a question.
Yes.
So first, I don't remember who it was because I don't think it was you that I was watching. But they were playing against Storm, and they just went like turn 0, Gemstone Cavern, and then like turn 1, Ugin's Labyrinth, like Trinisphere. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I guess they can just never win. Uh, and then, so against energy, I'm curious, like, you said you don't have a coherent plan, which looking at your deck, I think I agree. Um, but I'm curious, like, what you're bringing in, and have you tried Kozilek's Return, or is just the fact that it can kill your own stuff too bad?
Yeah, so I was thinking about Kozilek's Return. I was also looking at, as much as I love Mycospawn, and you hate Mycospawn, which makes me love it actually even a little bit more. I was kind of tinkering around. I haven't run one through a league yet, but I have a couple different builds of a list that cuts the green all together, except for from like the Cavern of Souls and Secluded Courtyard type lands, specifically just to kick Wastscape Battle Mage. But like I've tried uh, kind of brainstorming on a few different just red and colorless Eldrazi lists that drop most of the green, and that way you can play things like Lightning Bolt if you want. You can play things like Kozilek's Return. Um, and I think it's perfectly fine to like cut the It That Heralds the Ends and bring in the Kozilek's Return if that's something that you want to do against energy. Just because um, the buff that you get is actually relatively immaterial anyway, as you're watching their Guide of Souls and Ocelot's Prides with flying counters just go right over the top of all your guys. So like the +1/+1 buff from the, like really doesn't matter too much. I will say if you are going to play Kozilek's Return though, you probably want some number of null drifters in your 7 mana, like imprint into Ugin's lab slot. And the reason for that is if you're not aware, evoking a null drifter actually will still trigger Kozilek's Return from the graveyard to deal 5 to everything. So it gives you like a discounted way to nuke the board if you find yourself in a tough spot, which you often do against energy because once you're on turn 3 or 4, your Kozilek's Return is very likely not wiping the board because they've probably got at least one, maybe two Guided Souls triggers off at that point. And so, their guys have been buffed anyway. So you do want a way to be able to flash it back from the graveyard, um, long before you're like hard casting a 7 mana thing. So to be able to evoke a Null Drifter, I'd want at least two Null Drifters in that 7 mana slot if I was going with Kozilek's Return. But yeah, I've thought about that. I think it's perfectly reasonable. And I also do want to tinker around, like I said, maybe like cutting some of those, like name a creature and then it makes mana for of any color to cast, and maybe cut some of those lands and put in some like Carclusion Forests or other colorless and actual red pit lands. Because I think Lightning Bolt fits in this deck. I've had my opponent so close to dying so many times when they turn the corner. It's like I would give my life for a lightning bolt right now. So I think that there may be a build of that deck without sowing Myco Spawn that has a little bit more of an aggro tilt to
Good, good, good. The less sewing Micah spawns, the better.
it. So says you. All right. So did you want to talk about Vintage, Mapson?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we played Vintage. There's a shop near us called On the Draw. They do a monthly full proxy Vintage event, and it actually gets a pretty good turnout. I think the event that we played in had 12, which is not huge, but for a Vintage event, that's a lot. And in the past, they've had upwards of 20 or more for some of these. So they do draw a pretty good crowd, which is great because I certainly love paper Vintage. There's really no experience in Magic that is like it. Vintage Cube scratches that itch a little bit, but it's not vintage. So it's really fun to be able to go out once a month and play. And there are some people that'll show up with full power decks and no proxies, and they're ready to roll. And there are some people that show up with almost entirely proxy decks. And the great thing about the Vintage community is people really don't care about that. Vintage players just want to play Vintage against anybody that also wants to play Vintage. So they tend to be really fun, laid back events, like still certainly competitive. Like there were a lot of really good players, I think, in the room that day. But still, like it's a really cool vibe whenever you get to play paper Vintage. So I know it was certainly fun for me, but I think this might have been your first paper Vintage event, Mapson, or if not, maybe your first one in quite a while, right? Like, what did you think?
Yeah, it was not my first. It was my first in ages. So to give you like I don't remember when exactly the last one I played in paper was, but to give you an idea, Tales of Adventure was still running paper events, something they
Okay,
have long since stopped. And I played Young Pyromancer in my deck, and that was like a normal thing to do in the metagame.
that was a while ago. Yes, that was a little while ago. Okay. So
Yeah.
what did you think? Like, obviously, it's a very different format now than it was then. Some might say better, some might say worse. I think it's probably better. But I'm curious. Like, it's been a while. Like, A, what's taking you so long to get back to Vintage, and B, what do you think of your time playing it?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I just don't have a reason to play the format, right? Like,
Yeah.
my goal is I want to get back to the Pro Tour. And so the way that I'm going to do that is playing the RCQ formats. So I'm going to play Modern happily. I'm going to play Pioneer very reluctantly, and I'm going to play Standard. Um, and then I'm also going to play Legacy. There's a lot of opportunities to play Legacy, right? We have Legacy FNM, and there's just it's very easy for me to play that. There's not many opportunities to play Vintage. I do think we live in a good area for Vintage players, so like
Yeah.
it's definitely not non-existent, but there are less opportunities. And even on Moto, because I did some leagues, right, and it was like the queue times, it would be like I would wait 4 minutes and then queue into the same person I just played against.
A 4 minute queue time is very generous sometimes on Moto. I've had like 12 and 13-minute queue times. But yeah, you do have to be patient to play Vintage online, that's for sure.
Yeah, the 12, 13 minute thing is just kind of proving my point. Um,
It is. It is. I'm not trying to dispute your point. You do have to be patient to play Vintage Online for sure.
it's just like I'm just waiting and waiting. I'm like, didn't I just beat this person or didn't I just lose to this person? Um, I will say I definitely got caught because I played against like Montolio, and then
Mhm.
I after the match I get paired into them again, and they were on like Dredgevine, so I like
Yeah,
mulligan to a hand that would be good against Bazaar, and then like they were on something completely different. I don't remember what they were on. They were on like
probably
shops or
initiative.
something.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
no, I
Yeah.
did play against them on initiative too, and it was just
Yeah.
like this. Which that's on me. But I was like, I was bamboozled. Um,
That is one of the funny things about a 5 minute queue time is if you get paired into the same person, they did have time to change their decks if the last match was the end of their league. So
yeah.
that's happened to me as well, where you're like, all right, cool, I know this matchup, I just beat him, I'm good, and then they put out like a turn one white bloom against you, and you're like, oh, I wasn't ready for this, I'm super dead.
um, but I had fun. So I played a few leagues, like I mentioned. Um, I begrudgingly listened to the advice of my good friend Mark. Maybe you've heard of him.
Like
Um,
me.
he told me that I should play Loris PO. Um, and I wasn't going to listen, but then somebody else also told me I should play Loris PO. And I played two leagues with it. I 4-1 both, and I was like, well, I guess we're locked in. Um,
Battle ready.
yeah, this deck is really strong. It was weird because like I felt both impressed and underwhelmed at the same time, right? Like I had a game where I won, I believe it was the mirror on turn one, and I was like, this is sick. And then I also had games where it's like turn seven, nobody has anything, and I'm top decking like Thunder Trap Trainer with two lands out. I was like, this is atrocious. Like I could be doing anything else, like anything else. Um, but no, I mean the deck's good. I think you would know better than I, but I think a lot of people are calling it the best deck in the format. I will say three of the top four players at this event were on this deck. Um, it just has like a lot of ability to just like kind of win out of nowhere and come back from behind. Like there's games you're losing and you just draw a PO and you're like, oh, I think I won.
Right.
So that was like a pretty good thing to have, and it's definitely the style of deck I like to play. I like playing combo decks, and I like playing combo decks with Force of Will. I know people think of me as a lands player, but like if you just think about my decks, like, right, Amulet's a combo deck that can have permission post board. Breach was a combo deck with permission. Nadu is like a combo deck that could have permission. I've played a lot of Scape Shift and just like a lot of, like, I played a fair amount of Sneak and Show, like a lot of permission based combo decks. So
Yeah.
this was cool.
So, so I think a lot of our listeners probably know Modern and Legacy a bit better than Vintage. So why don't you talk a little bit about how do you actually win with this deck? So certainly it's not like turn Lurrus sideways 7 times, right? So like how do you actually win with this deck?
Yeah. So there are six whole creatures in the 75. So you do have the Lurrus, the Snapcaster Mage, and four Thunder Trap Trainers. And you can double those Thunder Trap Trainers. So it's almost like you have 10 creatures, plus Urza Saga is two more. So you have 12 creatures. So you can win turning things sideways. But yeah, like you said, that's not well, it is the plan, but it's not. Generate a bunch of mana. You play all the mana rocks, of course, and then you play uh, you play spells to dig through your deck. So you have your Thunder Trap trainers, your stock ups, and obviously your paradoxical outcome. PO, for those who don't know, you return any number of target non-land, non-token permanents you control to their owner's hand, and then you draw a card for each card that was returned this way. So if you have like a soul ring and two mocks and you cast the paradoxical outcome, it costs four, you can pick all of those up. It's mana neutral and you drew three cards, and then so any extra rocks are just generating things. And so you kind of go through your deck and you are drawing cards, you're accruing more and more value. Sometimes you get a Snapcaster Mage in the mix. When you get to pick up the Snapcaster Mage or the Loris with the PO, it's especially sweet. And then eventually you find your fourth Aer Lingus, and you cast that for like a bunch of mana, and your opponent dies. Also, though, I had games where it was just like, okay, turn one, like play Mox land, Lotus, fourth, and then you would just like attack for four on turn one and play a controlled game.
Yeah, I gotta say, whoever the beauty was that decided to put fourth Aerolingus in this deck is just, I mean, a mastermind, I gotta tell you, because what these decks were kind of doing before um, would play like Time Vault Manifold Key, for example. Some of them would, so that's an infinite turn combo for folks that might be unfamiliar. And then at that point, it kind of like doesn't matter how you win. Usually it would just be bigger as a Saga constructs. Um, and so uh, you didn't really have that like early game option that you just outlined there with the previous builds. Like your early game stuff was like Snapcaster Mage, Thundercat, Trap Trainer, etc. Unless you obviously had like a huge mana acceleration hand and you were just POing on turn one with some protection. Um, so yeah, having fourth Aerolingus in that deck and just being able to do exactly what you said, like turn one, maybe make two dudes, or like I had somebody do it against me where they did like Mana Vault, Mox Pearl, and then another Mox and a fetch land, and they were casting it for X equals three on turn one as well off of the Mana Vault basically, and it's like yikes, that's a lot of pressure very quickly, and that's the kind of deck where when they're drawing an extra card every turn from the Monarch, because don't forget Fourth Aerolingus gives you the Monarch there. Like that is pretty brutal to have happen early if you're not looking at a Force of Will in your hand and you're on the draw. So yeah, whoever decided to add Fourth Aerolingus into that deck, I think really ratcheted it up a notch and gave it a lot more early game play, besides just like the big POI win lines.
This deck was it was definitely fun, though. I will say that. It's funny because like I feel like you hear people making fun of others for playing Thunder Trap Trainer, Flame of Venora in Modern, but then we're
Yeah.
like, let's play it in Vintage. Clearly, it's good enough in that format. Which, to be fair, the Flames were pretty good. Just being like, I'll kill your Loris and destroy your box. Was pretty good. Or like I had it. I played a lot of mirrors, and yeah, being able to like blow up a Soul Ring and like I said, a Loris or maybe a Thunder Trap Trainer, or just being able to, more importantly, draw two cards and kill something was pretty huge.
Yeah, and there's not typically a lot of shops in the meta that we play in at that store sometimes. So this doesn't really come up, but there are a number of decks that will play main deck Null Rod, or now with Clarion Conqueror, Initiative plays four main deck Clarion Conquerors, which is like even crazier than Null Rod against you. So, even just having like main deck answers to those things is fantastic. And like you said, the fact that like the floor is that you cash it in for two cards. I mean, hey, that's pretty freaking good. So yeah, flame and vintage is a thing that's happening, and when you get to do two modes, it's very powerful.
Yeah, I know I blew up, I did blow up a Null Rod, and I also blew up a Chalice.
Yeah, feels good, doesn't it?
It did feel good.
And with Chalice restricted, so it's great to get that one off the board. Then you know you're good.
Yeah. So I said I played against a lot of the mirror, which is true, but one of the opponents who I played against, who I beat, of course, was actually you. And you were on Dredge.
You were my only loss in Swiss. And yes, I was playing Dredge. Um, I don't normally play Dredge, but I do have Bazaars, so I've been known to bring it out from time to time. And I just thought, hey, I've played in a bunch of these at this store. I don't think I've ever seen a Bazaar Baghdad deck. And I didn't necessarily think that I was gonna, surprise the room with it because people still have Dredge cards in their vintage sideboards, like they just do. So I didn't think I was gonna necessarily like cheese any game twos or game threes, but I also did think that, m maybe people like weren't as used to playing against it, or maybe had trimmed some of like the main deck hate that you might see, in more of like an online tuned deck list. Plus, I just like playing it from time to time. Like when I play Dredge, I'm a graveyard in front guy. I've got it all laid out, and I'm like pointing at my triggers and my Narc amoebas and my prized amalgams. I don't know. It's just like it's a different way to play Magic, and I hadn't done it in a while. So I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna play Dredge today. I didn't bring the best list. I didn't bring a list with Force of Wills or Force of Negations. I brought a list with Bridge from Belows and Cabal Therapies instead. And then I just like did not do well with Cabal Therapy the whole day. It did come up big a few times, but it was like every time I would cast Cabal Therapy, I'd be like, okay, it's one of these two things, 50-50. I'd do some math in my head, look at their graveyard, look at their exile, and pick one. And every time it was the wrong one. And so it's like, you know what? It would have been better to just have the blue permission in here. But, I was still, made top four. You were my only loss in Swiss. So it still went very well. The deck felt great. I mean, how bad can Dredge be? Even when it's bad, it's still Dredge, and you can still just snake a bunch of wins with it.
Yeah, Cabal Therapy seems difficult in this format, and maybe it's just because, I'm inexperienced, but a format full of one-ofs and restricted cards, like, it seems kind of hard to hit. Though I guess on the other hand, a lot of the restricted cards just get played out right away, so you know not to name those.
Yeah, you'll see some inexperienced players that may like Merchant Scroll for an Ancestral and then pass and leave it vulnerable in their hand. The more experienced players that might sniff out the Cabal therapies, or maybe if they're face up on the table, of course, like hopefully nobody makes that mistake if they're face up. But, I think the more experienced vintage players are less likely to leave one of those cards stranded in their hand from one of the face up tutors that you'll play. Um, but yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard. I mean, a lot of time I was just naming either force of will or paradoxical outcome or, whatever the situation kind of called for that I felt like I couldn't beat. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably just better to play the blue spells. Like, you just don't need Bridge from Below. It makes you weaker to Tabernacle. You don't need Cabal Therapy when you can just counter the thing. Because the games are over so fast when you're doing your thing that, like, that one turn speed bump is probably better than making them discard, like, second and third copies that they may have. So anyway, yeah, I played Dredge. I thought it was good. I had a fun time. I'm glad I did, but yeah, probably would have played the blue counter spells over the bridges and the therapies next time.
Yeah, I do remember it was funny because I was there and I was waiting for you to show up and people are talking about the event. They're telling me kind of what to expect because I knew a lot of the players there, but like they've never seen me there. And I was talking about like, oh, this has been my experience playing online this week. And they're like, yeah, no one here plays Dredge. Some of us still have like a sideboard card or two, just in case. Sometimes one person shows up who plays it, blah blah blah, and a few people are like, oh, I might just take it out, like take out the hate cards. Somebody actually offered me Dredge to play that day. Um,
Yeah,
and I was like, no, like I don't want to just put face up that I'm playing Dredge. And then also I mean, I didn't want to do that, right? And I've never played it, but as I was having these conversations, I'm just like in the back of my head laughing because I knew going into it that you were planning to play Dredge, and everybody was just like, yeah, not playing any grave hate, like it'll be fine. And I was like,
that's
oh, Mark's
awesome.
gonna murder you.
That's so funny. Yeah, and like I said, like I expected there might be like a little bit of softness to it because it hadn't been around, but I didn't expect any freebies, and I don't think I got any freebies. Like people were ready with like their surgicals and their ley lines and their soul guide lanterns and stuff like that. But definitely there were a few people where, I'd go play a bazaar, I'd tap it, and I'd say draw two, and they would just look at me and go, oh, somebody finally brought Dredge. So there were at least, I think, two or three different people throughout the day that commented on, oh, finally somebody's here with Dredge. So,
Yeah.
I think that we're keeping them honest. So next month I can show up with a blue deck again, and they've got wasted sideboard slots.
I actually have a question about playing against Dredge for you.
Sure, yeah.
Is there a reason people don't play Pithing Needle in this form?
There are some decks that play Pithing Needle. So Pithing Needle doesn't exactly solve your problems against Dredge. If you're on the play, it does, because they never get to activate Bazaar, but then they can just discard to hand size and start dredging that way. Or if you're on the draw and they've already put dredgers in the graveyard, they can just continue to dredge. So it absolutely slows you down and is a speed bump. But when you look at it up against, like if you're a deck that could play, for example, Containment Priest and Leyline of the Void and Surgical Extraction, you're sort of like weighing them against Pithing Needle. Like those cards actually like stop your deck from doing the thing, whereas Pithing Needle, I mean, look, if I'm mulliganing to six, mulliganing to five, and you needle me, like I'm not discarding to hand size before you've had a chance to set up and probably make it so that I can't win. So I don't want to turn people off to Needle, and there are certainly decks that do play Needle, but I think again when you evaluate it against Containment Priest, Leyline, Surgical, etc., Soul Guide Lantern, um, stuff like that, then um, I think those cards just do more. And I think the other thing to consider is the deck that you're putting it in, because like the Lurrus decks are more likely to run Soul Guide Lantern because they can just pop it every turn, right? They can just pop it and replay it, and you're helpless against them. Um, Especially after the game has been going on for a while, the Dredge player rarely has cards in your hand. Like after turn two or three, like it's very unlikely that you're going to be interacting with your opponent out of your hand. And so it's those are a few reasons why I think like you do see it, but usually it's in tandem with some of these other lock pieces. Lavinia being another one that comes to mind that shuts off not the graveyard aspect, but a lot of like the free spell aspect of the deck. So anyway, yeah, Needle does get played, but probably not as much as some of those other cards because the Dredge player can just kind of get around it a few different ways.
Yeah, I played one because there were games I played during my leagues where I was like, I feel like this is what I would want to get off of my saga here. Like there were
Yeah.
definitely moments, especially, maybe I've already gotten Soul Guide Lantern and my opponent doesn't have anything going on, and I just want to like make sure they can't find anything. So I played one and I was like, well, if I'm wrong, like it can't be that wrong, kind of thing. The one
I think
time.
one is reasonable. Yeah, I think one is totally reasonable.
Yeah, I know. I thought about getting it versus you, but then I believe I just killed you that turn instead, which is a better plan. But
Not from
yeah,
where I
okay, I was
sat,
curious.
but yeah, probably from where you sat, it was the strategic move is to just win.
Yeah, vintage was fun. I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad you gave me a good recommendation. Um, Appreciate you not just messing with me, just like giving me some terrible deck and be like, yeah, play this. It's broken. So I think I
Crab
probably would have
mill,
caught
crab
on.
mill. You would know. You would know. You would know.
If you told me to play the crab deck, I think I would listen, not because I believed you, but just because I wanted to believe you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair. I want that deck to. I mean, when they unrestricted fast bond, I wanted any fast bond deck to be good, but unplayable, unfortunately. So I would you play Vintage again, Mapson, or I guess before another 10-year layoff, would you play Vintage in the not too distant future based on this event?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I'm not going to go out of my way for it. It's just not going to happen, right? And
Yeah.
there is the opportunity cost, so it's going to be low on my priorities. Like, given the chance, like I'm going to play Legacy, the format I already know how to play, or I'm going to play Modern, which I already know how to play, or like if I need an invite, I'm going to play Standard or whatever. But like, I would play Vintage again. I had fun. Thankfully, that store runs their events on Sundays when I'm often free, so. I assume I'll be back. Plus, I do want to play. I mentioned this in the first episode. I want to play Vintage Eternal Weekend. So have to get reps in.
There you go. All right. Awesome. We have a vintage convert officially. That's fantastic. I'll take that as what I heard you say was I'll play vintage ahead of everything else because I had such a great time and you're such a good friend and it's a fantastic format and I want to play more vintage and I want to play more vintage with you. That's exactly what my ears heard from you.
Okay.
So I'll
Well,
make
we
sure you
may
know
need
of
to
all the
work on
upcoming
your.
vintage events.
We may need to work on your listening comprehension.
My wife would agree with you. Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on vintage before we move on, Mapson?
No.
All right. Me neither. Play. Well, my last thought is play the blue counter spells in your dredge deck. Don't outsmart yourself. Okay. So I guess last thing we had to wrap it up here. Where can people play Magic with us? So this podcast comes out every 2 weeks. So what do you have on your Magic docket for the next 2 weeks, Mapson?
Yeah. So This week, I thought I was going to be going back to the same store I got my Modern invite to get another one. And then even after I got two, I was thinking about going back to Dream Crush. But I realized we actually have a local Legacy 1K at that same store we played Vintage at. So I will be going to On the Draw on Sunday for some Legacy. If you live in the Philly suburbs, you should do the same. And then I don't know if there's any events that following week. And then looking 1 week ahead of that, I don't know. We'll talk more about this next week, but I will be going to Buffalo Chicken Dip Legacy.
Oh, exciting, exciting. Cool. Well, I will be at that Legacy 1K with you at On the Draw in Pottstown, so come out and play if you want to. And that is a proxy-friendly tournament as well, just like Vintage is. So even if you are not a Legacy stalwart with all of the duels and ancient tombs and all of that stuff, guess what? You can proxy it and you can still come out and play and have some fun. So please do it. It's a great store. But yeah, that's all for me for the next 2 weeks. Unfortunately, from a Magic perspective, but fortunate from a real life perspective, I'm doing a little vacation the following week. So this weekend I'll be at that Legacy 1K, and the following weekend I'll be in New England with the family, having a nice little like 5 day weekend up there. Is it a 5 day weekend if it's 5 days, or is that just a vacation? I think it's just a
You can call it
vacation.
whatever makes you happy.
It's a 5 day weekend then. It makes me feel more productive. So yeah, five day weekend up in New England for me. So no Magic on that trip with the fam, but I'll be back on the other side of that and looking forward to it.
Yeah, and then you'll come back all refreshed and ready to deliver the best podcast content you can.
I will have so many crystal clear Eldrazi ideas up in this big brain of mine, just ready to roll. This. All right. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Mapson, always a pleasure to spend some time with you, buddy, talking about Magic. And we'll see
Yeah.
you in a couple of weeks.
Oh, and quick housekeeping thing for the listeners. Um, we are still working on getting things set up in various places, but we do have a YouTube now. I know some people prefer to listen to their podcast on YouTube. It doesn't actually make sense to me, but whatever makes you happy. So you can find us at youtube.com/Eternal Witnesses Podcast. So check us out there.
There you go. You heard it first. Thanks, Mapson. See you, buddy.
Adios.